Welcome to another chapter podcast with your hosts, Claire and Rebecca.
Do you love books? Well, you've come to the right place. Join us as we discuss all things books.
Welcome to chapter 1 of another chapter, the podcast. Like every good opening chapter, this episode will be an exposition of sorts. We're going to introduce ourselves, and hopefully by the end of this chapter, you'll know both of us a little bit better.
So a disclaimer at this point in the episode, this is actually, I suppose, an updated version of our Get to Know Us episode. So with the benefit of a year's podcasting behind us, a bit more confidence and better equipment, we felt it was a good idea to kind of update it to 2024, Claire and Beck. To start out, I suppose, funnily enough, it turns out that our paths actually crossed long before we became Booksta Buddies on Instagram. It's like a nice little meet cute. It turns out we both studied in UCC together for our HDIP, which is the teaching qualification. And when we got friendly on Instagram and decided to meet for lunch because we're both relatively local to each other, we made the connection, and that was that. We were stuck together. And from that beautiful friendship came the idea for this podcast.
Yeah. Which is kind of mad.
Yeah.
Now, we might know each other well enough, but you might not know us at all. So I'm going to interview Rebecca.
And I'm going to interview Claire.
And hopefully you'll feel like you might know us a bit more before we get stuck in. So Rebecca, let's get started. And before I get into the book questions for you, can you tell us what your Instagram handle is and what the meaning is behind it?
So my Instagram handle is a rural reader, all one word. It looks like oral reader. I think a lot of people actually make that mistake, and it's not a mistake on their part, it's more on my part. I should have had the cap on to put spaces or commas or full stops or something between the words. But a rural reader, I live out in the countryside. AR are my initials anyway. I just thought of the name randomly one day when I decided to join Bookstagram, and it stuck. So yeah, Sinead.
I thought that you were an oral reader as well. I didn't mean,
and I don't blame people for thinking that.
Yeah. It's easy to.
I think it's only maybe if you saw it like on like a graphic thing on my page, maybe when it's broken down into the 3 individual words, that probably makes more sense. But oral reader isn't the worst name either, to be fair.
But when I was looking at your page as well, you were reading, before I joined Bookstagram, you were reading a load of audiobooks. So I was like, what a clever name. And I was totally wrong.
Well, it's a happy accident that the incorrect name is also quite apt.
Yeah. So what made you want to join Bookstagram? Did someone influence you to join it, or did you do it of your own accord?
I suppose I've been kind of lurking for a while, in the sense that I had been following some book accounts with my private account, and I actually created a Bookstagram account like a couple of years or maybe 18 months before I really started becoming active on it. I think I only properly started posting during that dreaded C word a few years ago. But I actually had an account a bit before that, and I'd say I had maybe posted 1 or 2 things, mainly because I was on NetGalley.
Oh, yeah.
And I needed somewhere kind of to say that I had like a social presence. But yeah, really only got into it kind of in 2020, I would say. I would say that Sinead, the Tired Mammy Book Club, is probably the reason that I kind of officially launched my Bookstagram, because I wanted to interact with her, monthly reads. And at that point, I suppose Bookstagram kind of was gaining a bit more traction. There were a lot more book accounts kind of seeming to pop up online and interact with each other, and I felt it was the right time. I don't think I was visible, as in my face or anything, on it for quite a while, but I'm at the point now where I'd say people are just sick of looking at me, to be honest. So yeah.
Okay. If someone wanted to read more and they're looking for kind of advice they want to get into it, they don't know what to do, they don't think they have the time. What would your advice for them be?
Actually, going back to kind of what we were talking about a while ago, the audiobooks have been an absolute revelation for me. Definitely up to probably 7 or 8 years ago, I wouldn't really have listened to audiobooks at all. But randomly one winter on my commute to work in Cork at the time, I decided to download a few audiobooks, and I really, really enjoyed listening to them on that commute. And it was a series, and I really, really enjoyed it. Now, even at that, it still took me a while to get into audiobooks properly. And definitely I found non-fiction kind of biographies were the easier, I suppose, genre to get into initially. The series that I was listening to first day was one I had read already, so it was quite familiar. So that was easy in its own way. But there a few years ago, I wasn't feeling well at the time, and I couldn't really read physical books or my ebooks. So I had no choice that if I wanted to read, I had to get into audiobooks a bit more, and ended up absolutely inhaling them. So now I walking around at home, drive to work, like everywhere, like grocery shopping, I have my headphones in, listening to audiobooks all of the time, and I fly through them. So I think that would be my big advice, that I always find time to listen to something, and at the moment especially, I rarely have the time to sit down to even an ebook. So I think audio, and there are so many options on audio now, and they're so well done. Like there's, I think, a huge market for audiobooks these days. So it's definitely an area, if you give yourself the time. I know a narrator can kind of make or break it for some people. But definitely, if it's something that you really want to do and you really want to get into books a bit more, but literally cannot sit down to read, they are an excellent option.
Very good. I would second that. I think audiobooks are brilliant.
Yeah.
Is there any book in particular you'd recommend to someone who wants to get into reading?
I think something, well, if someone was a reader kind of previously and was a bit stuck, I would kind of say reread a favourite, and that applied to my kind of audiobook experience as well. But I suppose more recently, something that's easy to read and in a genre you know you're going to enjoy. So if you maybe never read books but tend to enjoy like thrillers on television, you know, there are so many good crime writers and thrillers out there at the moment, especially Irish writers, like people like Andrea Mara, Catherine Ryan Howard, Sam Blake, so on. Like they're all really, really established crime writers. Like, you know, picking up one of their books, they're kind of almost guaranteed page turners. Something a bit more easy reading, like if you're looking kind of for more like character based, you know, cozy kind of books, something with Mike Gale. Like All the Lonely People would be one that comes to mind immediately, and it's not what I see a lot of love for around the internet, but like I found it's kind of a hug in a book. Even though it's a bit sad, it's also one that you just feel really lovely after reading it. So something like that is going to engage you, but also be relatively easy reading, would be my advice. And
the Irish writing scene is really fantastic at the moment. I don't think you can go wrong.
Unbelievable.
It's great. It is really great. Like it's very impressive is all I can say. There's so much talent in this teeny little country.
And lots of genres, not just the crime writing, even though that especially in the last number of years has just been phenomenal. But we'll say people like Claire Keegan, who writes novellas, like her stories are absolutely stunning. Like Donal Ryan's books are amazing. And again, they're kind of more quirky, character-based novels. Who else would you have? Like there's so many people like Carmel Harrington. Like there's just
Catherine Walsh,
Hazel Gaynor.
Yeah, there's no
Catherine Walsh, romance. Yeah.
Amanda Cassidy,
big romance person.
Yeah. Like there's loads and loads of people to be recommending.
We could be here all day, to be honest, trying to name off Irish writers that we enjoy, especially since we started the podcast. So some of the people we have just mentioned are people that will be interviewed in season 1.
Yes.
Which is a bit strange, considering if you're listening to this for the first time before you listen to the rest of the episodes. Some of those people are people we have actually interviewed since.
I wonder what that will sound like if you're listening to this and we already know what's coming up, because when we first recorded this, we hadn't a clue where this path is going to lead us. But yeah,
Claire and Becca from the future. Yeah, we can pretend we recorded this in December 2022, like the rest of our first episodes. But
I'm going to keep going now. So you have got 3 smallies.
I do.
Do your kids enjoy reading? And have you reread any of your childhood favourites with any of them?
My kids love reading. So we'll say my oldest guy and my middle guy are big readers, and actually are very able readers for their ages. They're quite advanced reading wise. So they love reading. Like, they will pop up to their room there in the evening, and especially the middle guy who's in junior infants, like, he's never not stuck in a book when he's kind of left to his own devices. And like, my oldest guy is on a big Roald Dahl buzz at the moment. We had great fun watching Matilda during the summer, and watching Matilda and rewatching Matilda and watching Matilda again. To be honest, it's fierce enjoyable. But it got him into reading the Roald Dahl books then, which was lovely. No, he'll read anything that's above in the room, to be honest. And the smallie then, she loves being read to. Like, it's a big deal if you have to go up and read her a story at night, which is obviously the plan anyway. But she'd nearly be plaguing you when it's coming up to bedtime, going, what book are we going to read tonight? Or she's very particular then about which ones she wants to have read to her and which ones she doesn't. She's a bit of a mood listener.
Yeah.
But at the moment, I haven't reread any of my childhood favourites. I suppose my ones would have been like a lot of Enid Blyton. Now, Roald Dahl, to be fair, would have been one as well. But like, Enid Blyton would have been a lot of what I read when I was younger myself. And I haven't quite got to that point of reading them with any of them.
Yeah.
So it is in the plan, but not yet. No.
I'm actually just thinking there that Roald Dahl's book Boy was my very first non-fiction book I ever read in my life that I can that I can think of.
Yeah.
Sorry,
that's interesting. Now, no, because we're obviously big proponents of non-fiction reads ourselves, or trying to be, as of the last year. So that's a nice little connection there.
Yeah. Last question for you: DNF or power through?
I have learned the power of DNFing as opposed to powering through. I always would have been someone that stuck with a book even when I wasn't feeling it. But definitely in the last 2 years, it's, as our kind of tagline says, like, so many books, too little time. There's always another book that will grab my interest more. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that if I put a book down that I'm never going to pick it up again. There have often been books that I've put down that I just wasn't feeling at that point, and I have come back to since and picked it up and flew through them,
Yeah.
But there have been some, like, there was one, I can't even think of the name of it now, but there was definitely one in the last year. I got to about 75% or 78% of it on the Kindle and just went, no, I can't. Or maybe it was an audio, actually. I just could not carry on with it. And like, that was once I made the decision, I was like, no, I'm not revisiting this. So it's rare enough that I'm like a total do not finish, but I am a proponent of, if you're not feeling it, just put it down.
Same. I don't think it's worth giving your energy to something that you're not enjoying. Reading is meant to be enjoying.
Yeah, and if you want to pick it up at a later date, happy days. And if not, so what? It shouldn't be the end of the world. Everyone likes different things. So
absolutely.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you for that.
So your turn. Thank you for that. So following your lead, before I get to the book questions, would you tell us your Insta handle and what the meaning is behind it?
So my Instagram handle is at Getting Back to Books, and there are full stops in between all of those words.
Clever Claire.
I know. Up here for thinking. I had a baby during COVID and was pretty much on lockdown in the house, couldn't leave, and I wanted to get back into reading, getting back to books, but it was a way for me to connect with people that were also reading and having a bit of a sense of community during a time when it felt like there was no getting to know anybody anymore. So
that's a really, really good point. I never actually thought of it that way. That like, obviously I know there's a great Bookstagram community, but that like for you and others, that was the only new community, that that maybe you were joining at the time.
Yeah.
Wow, I never thought of it that way.
There were no there were no mother and baby classes. So I had my first baby during COVID. I've had another one since. But yeah, there was no baby massage classes. There was no nothing. So anybody that I knew that had had babies pre-COVID had all gone on about how lovely maternity leave was, and they went for coffee with people, and they had mother and baby mornings and play groups and all of this, and that was obviously completely and utterly shut down, which is fair, but it was a very lonely time too, when you're a brand new mom and you're at home with a newborn, and like that's hard in itself, and then feeling quite isolated. Not even feeling quite isolated, but purposely having to isolate just made it extra difficult, I suppose. So that's why I was connected with you on my personal Instagram account, and as well Sinead, Tired Mammy Book Club. She I was following her, and she encouraged me to get involved, and then you jumped on board and also said that I should join Bookstagram, and I just went for it.
Best decision you ever made, I'm sure.
Yeah, I really enjoyed it. Yeah, I love
it. For both of us, it's really opened up a whole new part of our lives that didn't and wouldn't have existed without Bookstagram. Which is really, a very powerful thought, like that those connections you can make can be so influential.
I've got some absolutely amazing friends thanks to Bookstagram. You know, like I can't imagine not being friendly with ye, and I just don't. It baffles me to think that I could have gone and not met any of you. Yeah, really. It doesn't make logical sense to my brain that could possibly happen.
We're so stuck to each other now that you can't separate yourself. And have you found that your reading habits have changed since you joined Bookstagram?
Absolutely. So I read a lot more audiobooks now. I had bought a Kindle before COVID because we were going on holidays, and I couldn't actually fit the books that I wanted to bring into my suitcase. So I was like, oh, I'll just buy one. And I'd been very much an anti e-reader, but yeah, I read on that the whole time. But I think genre-wise, and I think this is something we actually only discussed last week, my reading habits with regards to the types of books that I'm reading has absolutely changed. I'm reading historical fiction, which I would have read a small bit of, but not loads of. I'm reading fantasy books, which I've only read as a child and like a preteen. A lot more non-fiction now as well, which is great.
And romance as well. It's something that I think both of us have gotten, now I would probably read a lot more romance, but definitely romance is something I know that you've gotten on board with in the last year as well.
Yeah, and I never have picked up a romance book before.
To the point where we've had discussions about various acronyms that appear in romance books and their meanings. We may or may not put the acronym in the show notes.
It's just very funny that I was in a position one day where some acronym was coming up on Instagram, and I texted Rebecca and I was like, what does blah, blah, blah mean? And then Rebecca texted back going, oh, do you really want to know? So I could have sat there and I tried to figure it out, and I did figure it out, and I texted her and I said, is it blah, blah, blah?
Because it's about 10 or 11 letters long, so like for you even to have figured it out, I was impressed.
Seriously impressed that I figured it out.
Yeah, so we'll see if people can guess what it was. I presume there's definitely romance readers, if anyone is listening to it now, that big romance readers going, I know what it is. So to take it back down a notch, what was the best advice you got, or what worked to get you reading more when you found it a struggle? Like, as you've already said, your kind of whole account, the idea was to get you getting back to books, getting back into reading. Mm-hmm. So what did you feel was the best advice you got that could maybe help someone else?
I think, to be honest, after joining Bookstagram in 2021, and it's now 2024, and I know it's very early 2024, but the thing that works for me 99% of the time is changing the genre of book. So stepping away from what your comfort zone is and trying something brand new.
Okay.
that has worked for me. Yeah, like I have, when I was first expecting my second child at the very start of that pregnancy, I really couldn't read. And then I was sent out an advanced copy of The Last Lifeboat by Hazel Gaynor. And people are probably sick of hearing me talk about that book, but it was just amazing. And I couldn't put it down. And I wouldn't have read an awful lot of historical fiction. So that for me was a game changer. And I think was Fourth Wing another one when I was in another bit of a slump that I said I'd chance that because it would be totally off the beaten path for me, and again just couldn't get enough of it. So that would be something. And like what you're saying, a reread as well is always a good thing. If you know that there's a book that you love and that you'll always love, rereading that will always give you back a bit of,
and like there's a certain amount of joy attached to books you already know you enjoy, so it's kind of like an easy dopamine hit, if you want to kind of put it that way. So you've mentioned now you also have some smallies in your life, a couple of them. How have books impacted your life with two smallies? Like, have any in particular helped you find your feet as a new mom, a second time mom, or have made like a really, really good addition to your life at this time?
Well, I read an awful lot to both of my boys, and well, my eldest anyway, he's 2, he loves books, and like your little one, have to read a book before bed. Like we got a Tony box off Santa Claus for Christmas, so he loves audiobooks.
Such a good boy.
Love the Tony box. He calls it his lunch box at the moment. He'll wake up during the night and say, "Where's my lunch box, Mommy?"
Oh my God. Like, that is the cutest thing.
So but with regards to my own parenting and stuff, the one that I'll keep going back to because it really helped me figure out, I suppose, what my values were is There's No Such Thing as Bad Weather by Linda McKirk-Aikson. I'm not pronouncing her name properly there whatsoever, but it's just all about the benefits of getting outside with your children, that we're living in a world where screens are taking over. And it's just a fantastic kind of an eye-opening read really about what's important and the benefits of getting outside. And alongside that then I try to do the 1,000 Hours Outside challenge every year. Fail miserably most years, to be fair, but once you're trying, you're not failing really.
Exactly. And actually just a random fact, like all of my kids are getting kind of eye tests pretty regularly because I'm short-sighted since I was very young, so they're just trying to keep on top of it. No, their eyesight is fine, but the last couple of visits now, like 2 different opticians have both said it, that like when we were younger, that generally it was around the age of like 10 that people were kind of becoming short-sighted. If it was going to happen, it was generally around that age. I'm very much paraphrasing now, but that due to not being outside as much, being on devices and screens and stuff. And come here, my kids are absolutely, they watch TV, they could be on my phone. We've a tablet in the house. Like, it's not that I'm saying don't use them, but because they're on them more than we would have been inside watching TV and stuff, and not outside as much. And basically that they're not getting as much light, like natural light, into their eyes, that it's kind of the age, instead of being 10, is generally around 6 years old.
Wow.
That is the age they're kind of saying that, like, if someone is going to be short-sighted, it'll be by that age.
That's unreal.
Which I thought was really, really interesting.
That's 4 years earlier, like.
Yeah. Now, obviously, then they were making the point as well that, like, the earlier they catch it, the earlier they can hopefully, like, reverse some of the effects. And if anyone's an optician now listening to me and I'm getting this a bit wrong, I apologise, but that was the gist of it. Like, that the more time they spend outside in natural light, the better it is for their sight
and for their sleep patterns. I'm going to jump in and just say that I read Until the Streetlights Come On by Ginny Ewart at the start of this year, and she has a whole chapter in it about light and the impact that it has on your brain and your sleep and your concentration on everything. And I found it so interesting. So what you're saying makes absolute sense.
Because I say we're all, like, very much guilty of, like, being on the phone or whatever till quite late at night, or it being one of the last things you look at before we go to sleep, Whereas like I like that now, even if it's only a couple of pages, like I have a book kind of on my bedside locker. So it's one of the few physical books I tend to get through these last few months. I have one on my locker that I kind of read a couple of pages at night, if nothing else, ideally. But that doesn't always go to plan either, unfortunately.
Yeah.
Just like while we're on the topic of like kids and stuff, like what was your favorite book as a child?
Oh, I had
Nice
loads.
question.
I remember on a Friday after school, my mom used to get me the little the wipe clean books where you could practice your letters and stuff.
Yes. Yeah.
So, yeah, my parents and grandparents very much encouraged reading from a very, very early age.
Yeah.
And I was able to read big books quite quickly. So like that, I was reading Enid Blyton and stuff quite young, and Roald Dahl and all of those. But one that always sticks out to me is Anne of Green Gables by
Okay.
Maud Montgomery. Yeah. My grandmother on my dad's side had a collection of the books, and she used to read it and kind of pass it on to all of the granddaughters. Now there was only about,
Okay.
I think there's only 5 granddaughters. But we used to all chat about the book then.
Ah.
It was like a little book club
Yeah.
in a way, which was lovely. And then my mother's mother, she passed away during COVID, and I got a copy of Anne of Green Gables from her. So there's a little dog ear on one of the pages that I will never be able to bring myself to undo. But it's a nice way to kind of connect back to both
Isn't
of my
it
grandmothers, I
fabulous from
think.
both sides that you have such lovely memories with that one book or that one series of books, I suppose.
Yeah.
That's lovely.
They always very much encouraged reading. Both of my grandmothers were big readers, and yeah, my parents really nurtured that in me, I think,
Yeah.
which is something that I want to pass on to my boys, because I think it comes from somewhere. Like someone has to show an interest in reading for you to start to be interested in it as a child.
Absolutely, yeah.
I think anyway.
And I'm not sure about you, like we wouldn't necessarily have had loads of books at home. Like we would have had a lot of kind of the Enid Blyton titles. I remember Mom kind of picking them up whenever she was coming across them. But I would have gone to the library a lot
Yeah.
when I was younger. Like that's one of my kind of overarching memories of primary school. Like when I used to come out of school on it was whatever day of the week, I used to get to go to the library, pick my books for the week,
Fab.
and head away home. Yeah, it was lovely. And like I just always remember being a member of the library and getting books from there, and reading things like Sweet Valley Twins and Sweet Valley High, and reading Stephen King, Far Too Young, and the librarian being a bit iffy, kind of going, do your parents know you're reading this book? And me going, yeah, I'm 11, it's grand.
Yeah.
I'm totally reading about like all this horror stuff that I'd just about pick up now. Do you know?
Yeah, I once joined the library all right as a child. I don't have like huge memories of the library. I just remember that I always had a book. Like one of my earliest memories of reading would be hiding up on the windowsill in my bedroom, trying to read by the street light outside. With my book. Yeah, because I couldn't. I was meant to be in bed. I was meant to be asleep, and that's how I used to manage to read after dark. Was sit up on the windowsill and let the street light shine in. And
that was your version of like the flashlight under the bed covers. Yeah, brilliant. I love that. I love that. But isn't it lovely just to have, I suppose, memories of reading? And that we are privileged to have been brought up
absolutely
as readers, and are also able to pass that on to our families now. And as teachers, it is something we try to pass on to our students as well, as best we can. And hopefully we are, if even one student kind of really enjoys a book we do in school, or kind of takes up a bit of reading because of something they've enjoyed doing in school, then that's fantastic.
Yeah, I always try to stop. So we've got a lovely library in our school, and if I see anybody carrying books around, and to be fair, some of our kids do, they'd have them in their hands walking between classes and stuff, I'll always try and stop and have a chat about. Yeah. Also because I'm quite nosy and I want to know what they're reading, but I think it's nice to show that it can generate conversation between people of different ages and all that kind of stuff.
And we can get away with it in school, whereas we can't, It isn't quite as socially acceptable to go up to randomers in the street and be like, I see you have a book.
I would love
Tell me about
to
it.
do that.
I actually would love if someone did that to me as well.
If I'm ever out anywhere and someone has a book, like usually people don't have the cover held up right in front of you, so you don't know what they're reading. Yeah. But I'm always so nosy. I'm just like, oh, what are they reading? If someone's engrossed in it in particular.
Yeah, same. Yeah.
Not that my TBR needs to be increased at all anymore. I think I've got enough on that to do me for the next 2 or 3 years.
Oh, like I'd say if I read nothing besides the books I have on my shelves / on my Kindle, I would never have to buy another book again.
Yeah.
Which is an amazing thought, and it's also a very frightening thought, you know, that there are so many books out there that we are never going to get to read.
Yeah.
We won't get too existential about it now on the first episode. So yeah, like after all that, I think it was quite a natural progression for us to maybe get into doing a podcast like this. You approached me in, was it summer of 2022?
Yes.
About doing it?
I just remember being like, kind of feeling like it's great reading about books and posting about them and posting reviews, but I felt that Instagram for me had become a review machine where and someone might comment and say, oh, I really enjoyed it too, or I agree with whatever point we made in a review.
Yeah.
But it was more the conversation about a book and the way that a book can spark a conversation based on one topic that's in it.
Yeah.
And that can just get you talking about anything and everything. I thought that was quite interesting. So yeah, I just kind of thought it might be something that you might be interested in doing. And to be honest, if I'm completely honest with you, I didn't expect that it would ever actually start.
Really?
Yeah, and that's nothing on you, it's more on me. I was kind of going, oh, it's a lovely idea, but I'm not going to follow through on this really. I might talk to Rebecca about it.
If I was left to my own devices, like if this was me on my own, like coming up with the idea and thinking, oh, I'll go do that, it probably would never have happened either. But I think because both of us were quite interested in the idea, we both kept the ball rolling. And like, in fairness to us, we spent quite a lot of time coming up with, we'll say, like the name, the brand, kind of the logo, like an awful lot of thought has been put into
even launched.
Kind of behind the scenes. Like there was probably 6 months. Yeah, like 6 months of kind of prep, or like it would say 5 to 6 months of prep before we ever recorded an episode. Isn't it? And yeah, it is. And like obviously we're very comfortable doing it now, but it it does take a lot of work, and we're both delighted that we are doing it. And like I suppose the plan for anyone that is listening to this as an episode 1, we're going to have kind of these chatty episodes. We will also have interviews with people who are from kind of the bookish world, like authors,
bookstagrammers,
booksellers, lots of different people, just, you know, voracious readers as well. And then we are going to do read-alongs.
Yeah, so the read-along is an idea that we had. It's kind of like a book club, but it's not necessarily a book club, where at the start of every month we'll announce a book on our Instagram page. Usually we try and get people to guess what the book is, and the first person to get it right wins a copy of it. So I'd definitely jump onto that one and try and start thinking what the books are, because, you know, we're fierce generous. But yeah, and then we all read the book and we put up a time frame, time schedule, reading schedule for people to follow along for the week before the read along weekend, just to make sure that people can get it read on time if they want to engage in the chats. Then we set up a group chat on Instagram and we throw in a couple of questions. Everybody chats about the book. So the information that's gathered then during those chats and the comments that are made and stuff, we use that information to kind of generate the discussion that happens for the read-along episode on the podcast. And we invite voice notes. We are more than happy to accept voice notes. And we put up polls and question boxes on our stories as well during the read-along weekends, just to kind of get people's feelings on the books. Now, with the read-along books, we go in blind, so we have no idea what the book is about before we pick it. We just we try and let's go for something that seems like it could be interesting.
So we're kind of picking it based on vibes in a way. Do you know, like we're literally going by the blurb and going, this sounds like it'll be a good read. Or else maybe we have heard something about it, but like not to the point where we actually know even really what the plot is about other than what's on the back cover.
Yeah.
So yeah. So it's a nice experience, kind of. It's an interactive experience as best we can make it. At the very least, it's the two of us reading the book. But in fairness, we've had a lot of buy-in from people. It's been great to have so many people kind of jumping along onto the read-alongs with us. And we hope that if you are listening to this now for the first time, that you will join us for one in the future. So I think that's it. Is there anything else you'd like to mention, Claire?
No, I think that's it. I think it's actually quite a privilege to get to come back and re-record the first episode, because it shows that things are going well for us. So thank you for listening along. If you're coming back to re-listen to the new episode 1, and if you're here for the first time, you're very welcome. And we're delighted that you've decided to come to meet us. Yeah. And we hope that you enjoy what's ahead of you with season 1, and we're very much looking forward to working on season 2.
Thank you all for listening, as Claire said, and enjoy another chapter. Thank you so much for listening to this edition of Another Chapter podcast. Don't forget to subscribe, like and share to keep the book conversation going. Thank you to Helen Becerra for the graphics, Mark Neville for the mixing, and to each of our contributors. Music is Make It Work by All Good Folks.
Don't forget to follow along on Instagram at Another Chapter Podcast. We'll see you there.